Have you ever thought about what it means to have type 1 diabetes? Can they eat what everyone else can? Do they have to have certain accommodations? Well, my name is Abby. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and my goal today is to answer those questions and give you a little bit of insight about what it's like to have type 1 diabetes. Imagine being asked invasive questions like, can you eat that, and how are you managing now? Don't worry, I'm not bitter, and most of us aren't. We just smile and reply with kind words, and then pretend that we said, no, of course I can't have that, but I'm going to eat it anyways. That leads to my first point. Type 1 diabetics can and must eat carbohydrates. They can also have sweets in moderation, just like everybody else. They just have to take insulin for everything. Every type 1 diabetic has an insulin to carb ratio that they have to abide by, meaning that they have to know how many carbs are in what they eat. I get 1 unit of insulin per every 6 carbs that I eat. So I have to know the amount of carbs in my food, not for dieting like with type 2 diabetes, but to know how much insulin to take. That leads to my next point. Type 1 diabetes is not type 2. They both affect blood sugar, but they affect you differently. Type 1 diabetes is a disease in which the body does not make enough insulin to control blood sugar levels. This is found in Harvard Health publications. As defined by the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, type 2 diabetes is marked by high blood sugar levels caused by the body's inability to respond effectively to insulin, combined with inadequate production of insulin by the pancreas. In an article Jennifer Berry wrote on Medical News Today, she states that according to Centers for Disease Control, as of 2017, 90 to 95% of people with diabetes in the U.S. have type 2. This makes sense, so it makes sense to assume that everyone with diabetes has type 2, but type 1 and type 2 diabetes are very different, and they differ drastically from one another, especially in everyday like food and exercise. This leads to my next point. Type 1 diabetics struggle with both high and low blood sugar. So we have to monitor our blood sugar daily and make sure that it stays between 70 and 120. Below 70, I experience low blood sugar symptoms in a hypoglycemic episode, such as dizziness and weakness and confusion. And above 120, usually 200 or more, I experience a hyperglycemic episode, and that's just lethargy and dizziness and confusion and nausea. So you take insulin for that. Both is bad, and it can cause long-term damage to your organs. That's why we wear a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, and an insulin pump to reduce chances of out-of-control blood sugars. The insulin pump is a blessing in disguise of a curse. There's multiple different kinds of pumps. I've had 2 in the 5 years I've had diabetes. For the first 4 years, I had Omnipod, a tubeless pump, and this is my first year with MiniMed 670G. So just to give you an idea of what an insulin pump looks like, this is mine, and I have to change the site every 3 days, and I have to change the CGM every 7 days, and I have to move it around so I don't get scar tissue. So it gets kind of tricky with this one. I'm not used to it. I have to be careful with it in ways that I wasn't careful with the other one since it has a tube. And that's where it becomes a curse. It's bulky, it's annoying, and it's like having my own personal leash. But it's a blessing because it keeps me from having to break out the vial of insulin and a syringe every time I need an injection. So in conclusion, type 1 diabetes is not the same as type 2. Type 1 diabetics can eat carbs, even the sweet ones like everyone else. They don't diet to control their blood sugar. They struggle with high and low blood sugar, and they often use a CGM to keep their blood sugar under control and a pump to limit injections. Hopefully now you know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Thanks for listening.